Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
France continues push for military intervention in Mali. Iran slams new EU sanctions as illegal, unwise, and inhuman. And former Bosnian Serb leader denies accusations at war crimes tribunal. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now. French Defense Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said an African military intervention in Mali is possible in a matter of weeks.
In statements to the media, the French minister mentioned the steps that must be followed after West African countries received the authorization of the Security Council to prepare a detailed plan for such an intervention.
He said that African countries have 45 days to do so. The minister clarified that France will not send forces to Mali.
Mali is becoming a French obsession. A few days ago, President François Hollande vowed to crush the Islamists there. Later, his defense minister spoke of a military intervention in the former French colony within weeks, not several months. However, he clarified that French forces will not be deployed on the ground. Paris will provide logistic support and will push for restoring Mali's unity. According to the French minister, the Sahel region is turning into a terrorist haven where groups, extremists, arms and drug dealers are dividing Mali. The minister vowed to prevent this division, considering the unity of these countries as significant for the safety of Europe. Paris's stance comes despite threats by Islamist groups believed to be affiliated with Al-Qaeda to open the doors of hell to the French hostages they hold. The Al-Tawhid wal Jihad group in West Africa warned that Paris will not be able to count the bodies of its nationals in the region if it continues to support sending troops to Mali. However, what seemed like a French project took an international turn a few days ago. The Security Council asked the Economic Commission of West African States, known as ECOWAS, the African Union and the United Nations to prepare a plan for military intervention within 45 days. This led Paris to conclude that the intervention will occur within a few weeks. However, regional parties still have their reservations about the idea. Among them is Algeria, although it was forced to enter the crisis since the Mali coup last March. It fears that Mali will turn into another Afghanistan and believes that intervention will only make the situation worse. And the only solution, in its view, is peaceful dialogue to dismantle the crisis, not to add more fuel to the fire.
The leader of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, confirmed that the attempts of the West to subjugate the Iranian population will fail. During a meeting with a number of officials in northeast Iran's province of Khorasan, Ayatollah Khamenei said the Iranian people are stronger than all the games the West is playing, adding that Western claims that Iran abandoned the negotiations is a lie. He said Tehran did not abandon the negotiations, including those regarding its nuclear program. Ayatollah Khamenei warned of getting pulled into the disinformation that is being waged by Zionist institutions that control the Western media. Iran considered the European sanctions imposed on it as illegal and inhuman because they target the Iranian people. China also rejected the new embargo, saying it does not help to solve the issues, but further complicates them. The European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Catherine Ashton, said she is hoping that intensifying the pressure on Iran will persuade the country to make concessions and resume negotiations soon.
The European Union's decision to impose new sanctions on Iran, hitting the banking, maritime shipping, and industrial sectors under the pretext of its peaceful nuclear program, was confronted by the reactions of Iranian officials. Iran, which has been facing collective forms of sanctions since the victory of its Islamic Revolution and before possessing a nuclear program, is still facing unilateral sanctions under the pretext of this program. This renders these sanctions illegal and inhuman since they target the Iranian population.
Iran presented a package of proposals to the P5+1 group at the Moscow meeting. European nations have regarded it as comprehensive and constructive. We have requested a response to the proposals, but they have yet to provide an answer. Sadly, instead of pursuing negotiations, they reverted to repeating their past mistakes. They think that by applying pressure and using threats, they will accomplish gains during the negotiations. But we invite them to stop these practices and to return to positive negotiations. The opportunity is available to settle the issues in a manner that guarantees our legitimate rights and removes the doubts of Western nations.
المسؤولون الإيرانيون يؤكدون أن حظر الاتحاد الأوروبي سيرتد.
Iranian officials confirmed that EU sanctions will affect European nations first, saying the policies of the West will not affect the solid Iranian economy. Rather, they will propel Iran to focus on self-sufficiency in all fields and to push for scientific advancement to fill the shortage in the country.
The Iranian economy is very solid and will not be affected by Western sanctions. We will turn these sanctions into an opportunity to fulfill self-sufficiency in different fields. European citizens and companies will be harmed by these sanctions, especially as the winter is approaching and they will be deprived from a large portion of Iranian gas.
China rejected the European sanctions on Iran.
We oppose unilateral sanctions against Iran. We think that using sanctions to place pressure cannot solve the Iranian nuclear issue in an essential manner. They could further complicate the issue and escalate the confrontation. We hope all concerned parties will show flexibility, increase communication, and aim for a new round of negotiations as soon as possible.
This new round of Western sanctions on Iran included adding Iranian Minister of Energy, Majid Namju, to a list of figures whose assets are being frozen and restricted from traveling.
Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today praised the European Union for ratcheting up sanctions against Iran. The comment came ahead of Netanyahu's annual meeting in Jerusalem with EU ambassadors to Israel. IBA's Aaron Viner was there.
Here at the King David Hotel, the Prime Minister today met with all 27 European Union ambassadors to Israel, where he welcomed the unanimous EU decision to slap the harshest set of sanctions to date against Iranian shipping, banking, and industrial sectors in the hope of forcing Tehran to negotiate its nuclear development program. Israeli leaders praised the EU today for sending a message to Tehran that Europe will not decrease pressure on the hardline Islamic Republic until it curtails its atomic ambitions. Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman said that failure by the EU to do so would be tantamount to the West's failure to stop Hitler in the 1930s.
I want to commend the EU for the tough sanctions that were adopted yesterday against the greatest threat to peace in our time, and that is the tough sanctions against Iran. These sanctions are hitting the Iranian economy hard. They haven't yet rolled back the Iranian program. We'll know that they're achieving their goal when the centrifuges stop spinning and when the Iranian nuclear program is rolled back. And I think this is a goal that is shared by anyone who wants to guarantee the security and peace of the world, not only in the Middle East, but throughout the world.
In addressing the world body's latest move, EU Ambassador Andrew Stanley reaffirmed Europe's commitment to remain centrally engaged in preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons.
In these unstable times, the EU's concern for Israel's security and well-being remains constant. Israel citizens should be able to live their lives in safety without threat of attack.
Stanley also voiced the EU's concern that progress toward the achievement of a two-state solution with the Palestinians appears to be diminishing, and called on Israel to bring those responsible for price tag violence to justice. The latest call for more time to give sanctions against Iran a chance to work came in concert with last night's appeal from British Prime Minister David Cameron.
Iran is not just a threat to Israel, it is a threat to the world. Now, there are some who say nothing will work and that we have to learn to live with a nuclear-armed Iran. I say we don't and we shouldn't. But at the same time, I also refuse to give in to those who say the current policy is fatally flawed and that we have no choice but military action. A negotiated settlement does remain within Iran's grasp. But until they change course, we have a strategy of ever tougher sanctions.
This is Erin Viner for IBA News.
The grave of former Defense Minister and IDF Chief of Staff Moshe Dayan was found desecrated this morning at the Nahalal Cemetery near the northern town of Migdal HaEmek. Scrawled on the headstone in red paint were the words, "The Minister of Failure on behalf of the fallen." The graffiti was referring to the 1973 Yom Kippur War, which caught Israel off guard and cost the lives of 2,500 IDF soldiers. Dayan's widow, Ruth, said in response that this evil act prevents the fallen from resting in peace, while his daughter, former Labour MK Yael Dayan, said she is saddened by the fact that time has not healed this hatred. A police investigation has been launched.
Relatives of the victims of the Srebrenica massacre say former Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic is trying to fool the world. The angry reaction follows Karadic's courtroom declaration that he should be rewarded for trying to avoid a war in Bosnia.
Ja sam Radovan Karadzic, po zanimanju sam lekar.
I am Radovan Karadzic. I'm a medical doctor, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, group analyst and writer. Instead of being accused for happenings in our civil war, I should have been rewarded. And here is why. Because I did everything in human power to avoid the war.
Karadzic is currently being tried at the UN's Yugoslav War Crimes Court for some of the worst atrocities in Europe since World War II. His charges include genocide, war crimes and crimes against humanity during the war in the 1990s. Among the atrocities was masterminding the murder of nearly 8,000 Muslim men and boys in Srebrenica in 1995. Relatives of the victims and survivors of the Srebrenica massacre demanding the international community take responsibility for its inaction during the massacre.
Relatives of Bosnian Muslims massacred in the town of Srebrenica filed an appeal to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg to sue Netherlands over a court ruling that said the Dutch UN peacekeepers had immunity from prosecution and couldn't be held accountable for failing to prevent the genocide.
We just filed an appeal to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, where around 100 of us went. Our goal was to file this appeal so we can finally have justice.
Grieving widows and mothers filed an appeal against a verdict by the Dutch Supreme Court in April this year, which granted Dutch UN peacekeepers absolute immunity from prosecution. The families of victims and Srebrenica genocide survivors believe that the Dutch UN peacekeeping forces should have protected civilians in Srebrenica, and they feel that the peacekeepers are partly to blame for the deaths of more than 8,000 Muslim men and boys by Serb forces in July 1995 in an area protected by the Dutch UN peacekeepers. Many of these women think that the UN, as the international human rights organization, should not stand above the law and should take responsibility for its role in the Srebrenica genocide in 1995. They say granting immunity to the UN was disappointing to the genocide survivors and families of the victims.
We are asking for justice because our sons and genocide that we survived cannot go on without punishment. We were under UN protection. What kind of institution will allow genocide and later on protect itself with immunity? They have to face justice and take responsibility.
Bosnian Serb wartime leader Radovan Karadzic and his military chief Ratko Mladic, the two people considered most responsible for the genocide of about 100,000 people during 1992-1995 Bosnian War, are both facing trial for genocide before the War Crimes Court in The Hague over Srebrenica. This appeal, as many of these women claim, will not bring back their sons, husbands and brothers, but it will help teach the international community a lesson that everybody needs to answer for his actions. Ivana Šetić, Press TV, Sarajevo.
إلى الكويت حيث اعتقلت الشرطة الكويتية 5 أشخاص على
Kuwaiti police arrested at least 5 people during a protest held last night to protest the possible amendments to the elections law. The protests witnessed rare criticisms of the Kuwaiti Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah. Eyewitnesses said that nearly 5,000 people participated in the demonstration and that skirmishes occurred and led to the injury of several people. Opponents called for a sit-in today in front of Parliament to protest the arrests.
أعلنت وزيرة الخارجية الأمريكية هيلاري كلينتون أن المسؤولية
US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced that the ultimate responsibility for securing her country's consulate in the Libyan city of Benghazi is hers.
والتي تعرضت الشهر الماضي لهجوم أسفر.
The embassy was subjected to an attack that resulted in the death of the American ambassador to Libya last month. Clinton confirmed that guaranteeing security for diplomatic missions abroad is her duty, not that of the White House.
مسؤولية البيت الأبيض. مثل المسؤولان السابقان في عهد النظام الليبي السابق.
2 former Libyan regime officials, Mohammed al-Zawey and Abdulati al-Obeidi, appeared before the Tripoli Appeals Court, where they are being tried on charges of squandering public money in the Lockerbie case and of treason. The court ordered them to remain in prison pending the outcome of the case and rejected the defence's request to release them on bail.
Strict security measures were enforced near the Court of Appeals in the Libyan capital Tripoli as 2 former officials from the era of the late leader Muammar Gaddafi, Speaker of Parliament Mohammed al-Zawey, and Foreign Minister Abdulati al-Obeidi arrived to appear before the court. They are charged with squandering public funds by granting compensations to the families of the victims in the case of the bombing of a Pan-American plane over the Scottish city of Lockerbie, which exceeded $2.7 billion, and for treason by betraying the state's trust to negotiate on its behalf abroad. During the session, the 2 defendants denied the accusations directed against them by the judge, who refused to release them and ordered to keep them in prison pending the outcome of the case. As soon as the session ended, the defense lawyer expressed satisfaction with the course of the trial, despite the rejection of his request to release his clients on bail.
The court granted our request despite rejecting the request for their release, but this is its jurisdiction. I am satisfied because the court heard us and heard the justifications for the release request and the justifications to hear the defense witnesses. We hope that the trial will be a fair one.
The Libyan streets seem to be following this case with great interest, placing their confidence in the Libyan judiciary.
The Libyan judiciary is known for being fair, and it has been in existence for a long time, and we are very confident in the Libyan judiciary. As for the people who are now being tried, the law is the decider. If the law finds them guilty, they will bear the consequences of their acts. And if the law finds them innocent, they are just Libyan citizens, just like all Libyans.
Everything is under the command of the Libyan authorities and the Libyan judiciary, and I am certain that at the end it will be fair and it will not be unjust again.
According to the documents of the case against the 2 defendants, they are not authorized to negotiate all of the provisions of the agreement and its conditions, and they will be tried in accordance with the economic crimes law and the penal code.
The Arab League welcomed the recommendation of the joint envoy to the Syrian crisis, Brahimi, for initiating a truce between Syrian regime forces and the armed opposition in light of the ongoing clashes in several parts of Syria.
The Arab League's Deputy Secretary General, Ambassador Ahmed Ben Hilli, welcomed the recommendation of the joint envoy to the Syrian crisis, Brahimi, for initiating a truce between Syrian regime forces and the armed opposition to stop the violence that has been ongoing for 20 months. The Deputy Secretary General added that the League's Secretary General, Nabil al-Arabi, will be meeting with Brahimi in Cairo on Wednesday. They will discuss the outcome of his tour to the region and the negotiations he held with international parties and the recommendations presented to solve the Syrian crisis. Brahimi had held talks with Egyptian Foreign Minister Mohammed Kamal Umar, during which they discussed the developments of the Syrian crisis and Brahimi's mission. Egypt said it asked Syria to clarify the circumstances around the killings of 3 Egyptians, including a leader of an opposition combat group. According to Damascus, they died in battles in Aleppo and Damascus. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry confirmed it sent an urgent memorandum to Damascus demanding clarifications about the killings. The Syrian Air Force launched its most violent raids on the surroundings of Marrat al-Nu'man since opposition gunmen took control of the city last week. Clashes took place near military centers close to the city. The most notable clashes occurred in Wadi Daif, the largest camp for regime forces in the area, which gunmen had lately attempted to storm. The Hamadiyya camp south of the city was shelled by locally manufactured rockets. Violence also reached several parts of Syria. In Aleppo, clashes took place in the 2 neighborhoods of Al-Hamadaniya and Al-Maidan. In Homs, regime forces are trying to storm the Khalidiyya district and a number of nearby districts that are controlled by the armed opposition, especially in the center of the city.
Electronic cards were distributed to displaced Syrians in Turkish camps, and despite their displacement, Syrian refugees are trying to adapt to their new reality.
Despite their displacement, the conditions of Syria's refugees behind the Syrian-Turkish border is much better than those who are unable to cross the border. In the Turkish camps that are spread along the border, the displaced live in pre-made houses as aid agencies are working on providing them with food and clothes. Finally, the World Food Programme and the Turkish Red Cross have set up a plan to distribute electronic cards to thousands of refugees. The cards come with a specific monthly allowance so refugees can buy necessary food items from large retailers in the border areas.
The World Food Programme and the Turkish Red Cross developed this card. It's a type of credit card that allows Syrian refugees to make purchases at large retail stores full of fresh produce.
Syrian families haven't been satisfied with the modest aid they receive that includes bread and food. They decided to bring some of their traditions to the killer's camp. Winter is near and the crisis is long, so women decided to take advantage of their downtime here to prepare their pantry. The equipment available in the houses motivated women to cook food so that their fragmented family can be reunited at their modest dining table. While international agencies and organizations are trying to provide the displaced Syrians their basic needs, their increasing numbers in neighboring countries threatens a nearing humanitarian crisis.
The Palestinian Government Media Center organized a ground tour for a number of parliamentarians, the national authorities authorized ambassadors, and foreign journalists to the village of Aboud, north of Ramallah, to see the reality of the village and the ongoing violations committed against it by the Israeli occupation authorities.
In the midst of the settlement campaigns assaulting farmers and their properties, which started as citizens began picking olives, the government's media centre accompanied parliamentarians, foreign journalists and ambassadors of a number of authorised countries on a ground tour of the village of Aboud, north of Ramallah, to witness the realities of the village.
Aboud represents a small version of the Palestinian reality and the most beautiful coexistence between Muslim and Christian brothers and sisters in Palestine. This is a village that struggles in all forms of peaceful ways to preserve its land and vast history. It also represents the difficult reality of living under the occupation and what it includes from confiscating land to cutting trees and losing private properties. The reality of the occupation and the reality of this settlement campaign create instability.
Minister of Agriculture Walid Assaf participated in the ground tour that was launched from Deir al-Atin in the centre of Aboud village and headed toward the agricultural lands under threat of confiscation by the Beit Ari settlement, which is established in the lands of the village of Al-Luban al-Gharbiyya and Aboud.
Today we are here along with the Palestinian Media Center.
I came here along with the Palestinian Media Center to watch Palestinians picking olives in the village of Aboud and to express solidarity with Palestinians against the apartheid wall.
We are here to upright.
This delegation's trip to the village of Aboud aims to inform the visitors of the conditions the citizens are enduring due to the rampant settlement policies and the effects of the apartheid wall that has devoured hundreds of dunams from the village for the settlements and divided side roads around it.
For a long time, I only took up my post.
We are here to learn about the reality on the ground, and I am very grateful for this visit that allowed us to watch the people and to listen to their opinions directly.
And try to see the reality on the ground.
هاي الجولة لتفقد مسار الجدار في أراضي قرية عبود.
This tour is examining the path of the apartheid wall on the land of Aboud village and aims to observe the economic, geographic, and psychological damage on the citizens of the village of Aboud, especially since this village is Christian and Muslim and has been distinguished for its coexistence for years.
تميزت بالتعايش على مدار أو على مدى السنوات السابقة.
As soon as the delegation reached the citizens' lands, they were shocked to see the cancerous settlement that surrounds the village from 4 directions and shuts down most of its entrances. The village only has 1 entrance now. They confirmed their determination to convey the reality of the citizens' suffering to their countries and expose the occupation to the international public.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic. Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.